The first thing we notice about this email right away is the very formal phrase, as per our discussion. We can instantly warm up the tone here, make it more friendly by saying something like this. As we discussed last Tuesday, much more conversational. Then in the next sentence, I see an example of what I would call more elevated vocabulary than is called for. The prototype requires, we could say requires, we could also say needs if we wanted to, a number of minute adjustments. Could we rephrase that and say something like some small changes? Or we might even say a few tweaks if we wanted to be a little bit more casual. You can see how you can maintain a professional tone along really a spectrum of formality. So some small changes is slightly more formal than a few tweaks, because the word tweak is kind of a more colloquial expression. Now we have a phrase here, in order to. We can simplify that just by saying to. So when you reduce wordiness, you also make your tone sound more friendly, because what you are doing by pruning your language and tightening up is you're making your writing more accessible to your reader. So the prototype requires some small changes, maybe we'll go with that one, to prepare it for release at the upcoming trade show in Los Angeles. Now, I wonder, is there a way that we could also tighten up this last half of this sentence and make it sound a little bit more friendly? We might be able to do something like this. To prepare it for the Los Angeles trade show. If we are preparing for something, I think we can assume that it is upcoming, that it's happening in the future, not the past. Now let's look at the second paragraph. Again, here we have some very formal language that jumps out at me right away, duly noted. We also have a very wordy way of talking about the possible redesign. We can work on that. Also, we have a fairly kind of stiff, I would say, or standoffish way of expressing gratitude. We are grateful for this suggestion. How about a simple thank you? And talk about taking it into consideration. Again, sounds a little bit aloof to me. So let's see how, by taking the language down a notch and making it a little bit more informal, we can warm the tone up here without sacrificing the professionalism. So here's one way we might transform that paragraph and make the tone friendlier. Instead of saying we are grateful for the suggestions that have been duly noted, we can just say thank you. Thank you for your suggestions about redesigning the configuration process. Those will be helpful as we work on the upgrade. So instead of taking them into consideration, again, we are creating a more inviting tone here and a more collaborative tone by noting that these suggestions will be helpful. Finally, in the last paragraph, again, I see some of what I would call canned language that's jumping out at me as something to address. So further, a very formal way of making a transition. That sounds like something you would see maybe in an article rather than in an email. We wish to inform you, again, very, very stiff language. And when we talk about something being in accordance with the work schedule, that's some very archaic language, really, that again makes the tone here distance the reader rather than draw them in. So let's see what we can do with this final paragraph. Here's one way we might simplify that paragraph. First of all, instead of talking about delivering the prototype, which puts the emphasis on what the writer is doing, we could flip that around and start by addressing the reader as you. So now the emphasis is on what they are going to be doing. So they're going to be receiving the next version of the prototype. By using more specific language, we also make this more reader friendly. So instead of just saying we're operating in accordance with the work schedule, we let them know you're going to get this by November 20th, and then we can emphasize that this is on track with the work schedule. And of course, mentioning that continues to build trust, saying that we are delivering on our promises. So this is just one possible way to reword this email, and you can see how just tweak by tweak, line by line, a few small changes can make a big difference in terms of the tone and therefore the impact that this has on the reader.